When Liverpool didn't score this 5v2 on the counter-attack, that's when I thought to myself that Man United could find themselves back in the game. And not only did they equalise, they then went on to have one of the greatest comebacks in FA Cup history, and this was definitely one of the best games in FA Cup history. And I hope everyone's had a moment to collect a breath, because I'm going to be breaking down the entire game and you're probably going to have some of the same emotions running through you as well, as there was so much to talk about. There were positives and negatives for both sets of players and managers, and I think actually there's a lot to talk about, but it's also a game of really fine margins, and the fine margins are that Man United find themselves in the next round of the FA Cup with a very favourable draw against Coventry City and should find themselves in the final again for a second consecutive season. And Liverpool have their quadruple hopes dashed at the hopes of their fierce rivals Manchester United, and it's one where it leaves probably a little bit of a bitter taste for Liverpool fans, but not the end of the world, as we'll talk about later. But I think there's so much to talk about when we need to get into it, because Man United started this game really on the front foot, and what it was with Marcus Rashford down the left hand side, arguably Man United's biggest threat when he does have the ball. And what he was doing was every time he get in the ball, he was constantly running at Joe Gomez and Joel Kwanzaa, and it was actually Man United who were targeting his left hand side of Liverpool, because with the other side being Virgil van Dijk and Andy Robertson, there was very little chance of Man United having huge success down the side, so they decided to go for the weaker side. And obviously what Wan-Bissaka was doing actually in the attacking sense was he was continuously getting forward and underlapping Marcus Rashford here, because really you don't want it to be the other way around, because if Aaron Wan-Bissaka is on the outside of Marcus Rashford, with him being on his weaker right foot, I don't think that leaves very many options apart from Wan-Bissaka cutting in. But with Marcus Rashford, he can go both inside and outside, and he was actually causing a lot of havoc because Rasmus Højlund was obviously occupying the centre backs, and mainly he was doing a job on Virgil van Dijk, and obviously Garnacho was getting very high and wide on Andy Robertson. And then with Bruno Fernandes also getting involved in the half spaces, Endo had to get back. Kobbie Mainoo I thought was fantastic in this game. Really need to give a massive shout out to Kobbie Mainoo, because for someone of his age to play in this level of a game and to really shine in that midfield, at times I think he outshone Scott McTominay. I think he outshone Bruno Fernandes in that midfield. I think he was absolutely fantastic, and you want to give a massive shout out to Kobbie Mainoo. He's not obviously in the England side at the moment, but there's only a matter of time before he will be. He's in the England under 21s, and I think maybe potentially this year is a bit too early for him, but I think definitely in the future, in the next tournament, in the World Cup, he will 100% be there, because he is so good on the ball. The amount of times he got away from the Liverpool defenders, I mean, when he's facing towards the Liverpool goal, I thought when he was making that runs and darting past a couple of players, I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Really supported this left hand side of Man United really well. But back to Man United, who were really in the ascendancy in the first 10 minutes, a bit similar to the Manchester derby a couple of weeks ago, in the fact that, when they're coming out of the block with all that adrenaline in your veins, they were really doing a fantastic job of pinning back Liverpool. I think the one issue was Mo Salah wasn't really tracking the runs of Aaron Wan-Bissaka, which meant that Liverpool constantly were a man short in the defence, and Man United constantly had a man over, and that was Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He didn't always find himself with the ball. Obviously, he made a very early run in the first half where he took a shot, and if he actually left it for Scott McTominay, it might have been right and a better chance for them. But actually, I think, him just being there meant that the Liverpool player had to go and mark him, and meant there was always another Man United player free. And I thought to myself, well, that's where the first goal came from. And to be fair, the first goal came from Kobbie Mainoo, who I just spoke about, and taking a lovely quick free kick. And it's so important that Man United do take that free kick quickly, because it does mean that the Liverpool backline is all over the place. And what you can see is Joel Kwanzaa, as a result, is the one in the right back position facing up Marcus Rashford. And then Joe Gomez is the one who's covering for him at right centre back. And then as you can see, the space between Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, who are now the two centre backs in this position, in this phase of play, is absolutely massive. Now obviously there isn't any immediate danger because of the fact that Rasmus Højlund is pulling on to Van Dijk and Garnacho is goal side of Andy Robertson, but as you can see, as the play develops, it becomes a massive issue, because what happens is Liverpool get a lot of players back in the help of the defence, and Man United players slowly work their way towards Marcus Rashford and help him out a little bit. But then what happens is they're all watching the ball in this phase of play now. You can see Kwanzaa, Gomez, Endo, McAllister, they're all ball watching, and there are three Man United players all on their shoulders, and no one's paying attention to who's marking who. Obviously, I think what's really important here is, and incredibly underrated, is Rasmus Højlund and how he's pinning back Virgil van Dijk in the situation, which means that Van Dijk can't really push out or forward to Garnacho, which is what he'd like to do and fill that space, because he really wants to pass on Højlund to Andy Robertson. And as you can see, because Rasmus Højlund is pinning Van Dijk, it becomes a massive issue for Liverpool, because as Rashford gets the ball back from Bruno Fernandes, Garnacho is then making that run, and that space between Van Dijk and Joe Gomez actually becomes even bigger. Van Dijk is trying to close it, but because Rasmus Højlund was pinning him down, he wasn't able to get as far out as he'd like to. But not only that, there is a lack of communication in that situation between Kwanzaa and Gomez, because Joe Gomez is naturally going out to Rashford because he's his man. He's the main threat for Man United. Both trying to close down Rashford, but really one of them should be pulling back. And I think this is really Joe Gomez's fault, because he should be looking back for Alejandro Garnacho. He should be in that space where Garnacho is running into. And I think to myself, that is a very easy pass for a player with the quality of Marcus Rashford to play. And then Garnacho finds himself with time and space to take a shot at Kelleher. And of course, Scott McTominay is the one who puts the ball in the back of the net at the end of it. But when Man United take a lead in the game, they have a terrible habit of letting their opposition take control of the game and get themselves back into it. And it's really something that Erik ten Hag needs to figure out. But we'll come on to Erik ten Hag in a bit, because I think there are a lot of positives to talk about in him specifically in this game. But then how did Liverpool counteract that? Well, they did something very similar to what Manchester City did in the Manchester derby. It was that they slowed the game down and played it at their own tempo, not the tempo that Man United want to play. Because if it's up to Man United, they'll sit back, defend deep, and they'll hit you on the counter-attack. They didn't quite do that in this game. They were very much on the front foot, but they do just seem to have a habit of, I don't know if it's fitness, because they played 120 minutes in this game and did fantastically well, but they do just drop off in moments in games and during spells, and they can't seem to, just have a moment where they keep possession for a period of time and let themselves catch their breath. They all seem to be gun-ho, and they invite the opposition back onto themselves. And what happened was, Liverpool then did revert back to the back three that they like to play, that they have been playing with so far this season, which meant that Joe Gomez ended up inverting into that midfield. And what we haven't seen from Man United this season is a player inverting into that midfield from any position, whether it's one of the fullbacks, whether it's one of the centre backs, whether it's one of the wingers doing it. They always play with a three midfield, and there's always three, there's never four. And Liverpool use that to their advantage, because as you can see here, if Garnacho pushes up on Robertson, if we'll say Marcus Rashford pushes up on Kwanzaa, and when Gomez there, they've completely outdone Man United with a 4v3 in that midfield, Liverpool. And you think to yourself, right, they just need to find that spare man in that midfield and they'll be absolutely fine. And they were. Because what happened was, when Liverpool got the ball, Van Dijk typically would have the ball. Rasmus Højlund would try and press Van Dijk. And then Bruno Fernandes would have an issue. Should he then go and press Endo? Or should he then press Gomez? Which one is he going to do? And it doesn't really matter what he does, because whichever one he doesn't go and press, Van Dijk will pass to the other one. If he's slightly more to Gomez, Van Dijk will pass to Endo. And that's actually what happened in one of the scenarios. He passes it to Endo, and then what happens is Bruno Fernandes goes to press him, and then Kobe Mino realizes, oh wait, you've got Dominic Szoboszlai and you've got Joe Gomez, and I need to go and press one of them. And actually Joe Gomez gets himself a bit further forward, Dominic Szoboszlai presses further back, and then you go Alexis McAllister is pinning back Scott McTominay. Kobe Mino, where do I go? And to be fair, like I said, Kobe Mino had a fantastic game, but in this one situation, I can remember vividly in the first half, I think you had the Man United defence, and then you had the Man United attack, and I think you just have Dominic Szoboszlai completely on his own. I think Endo makes his pass, and I actually got the screenshot to show you. And here it is, because look at all the space that Dominic Szoboszlai finds himself in that position. You've got the Man United back four running back towards their own goal, and you've got the Man United midfield desperately trying to catch up. And I just thought to myself, it's only with Man United you find this team in this position. When they're 1-0 up, you'd think they'd be a bit more structured in the defence, but they weren't. Thankfully for Man United, it didn't cause them any harm. But I did think to myself, the Liverpool are knocking on the door, and they absolutely were. Because this was the warning sign from them, and this was the build-up for the Endo disallowed goal, which Mohamed Salah was offside, and correctly was offside, fair play to the officials. But I just think to myself here, Man United and Rafa Varane has the ball here, and he's being very close down in the corner, in that particular corner, which Liverpool do end up scoring from. And I just think to myself, yes, Varane's about to pass the ball to Wan-Bissaka, but it's a very precarious situation for them to be in. And as we know, what happens is the ball goes to Bruno Fernandes. He ends up losing the ball to Wataru Endo, and Liverpool break, and they could have scored from this position. Thankfully for Man United, they don't, but this was the warning sign. If you play it out from the back and you get it wrong, Liverpool will be pressing you high up. They will try and win the ball back, and if you do lose that ball, you are in trouble. And just remember that, because it was a very similar situation for the second goal that Liverpool do score later on in the game. But if you break down the first goal for Liverpool, and I think at this point in the game, Liverpool were in the ascendancy. Man United did seem like they were just kind of hoping for half-time, get into 1-0 up, and then, be really happy with their performance. But I think they did... This first goal was very, very sloppy from a Man United perspective. It was very well worked from Liverpool. And I think to myself, the one issue which we have here is that Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who had a fantastic game, I think, coming back from injury, did really well coming up against Mohamed Salah. It's actually really interesting that Erik Ten Hag decided to play him at left back and not Dalot. I thought it would be the other way around, but putting Wan-Bissaka on Salah was a fantastic move because he's such a great one-on-one defender. However, because he's so fixated on Mohamed Salah, and you know what, rightly so, but he does leave in this situation a massive gap between his centre-back, Rafa Varane. And what happens here is Kwanzaa steps into midfield, a bit almost like Matip-esque almost at times with his run, it kind of reminded me of. But I think to myself, right, Bruno Fernandes obviously gets scored wrong side, that's fine. The issue I have is with Marcus Rashford in this situation because he cannot let Jarell Kwanzaa get past him. And Rashford initially gets into a very good position to block the path of Jarell Kwanzaa, so he has to pass it to Salah. As you can see, Wan-Bissaka is already on his toes, ready to try and close Salah down immediately as the ball goes to him. But Kwanzaa doesn't do what they all expect. He's actually going to drive into that midfield, which Marcus Rashford cannot allow him to do, because it allows Kwanzaa to drive into that massive area and cause a real threat to Man United from where they're actually in a really comfortable position. And this is what's really frustrating from a Man United defensive perspective, is the fact that Darwin Núñez is the only man in the box, and Alexis Mac Allister has actually got a couple of United players around him when he does end up taking the shot. They could have done really better, and it was so simple to stop Kwanzaa. But credit to Kwanzaa, because Liverpool at that point were knocking on the door, but they weren't really breaking it down. Very lucky with the deflection of Kobe Mainoo. Nothing he can do about it. Nothing Onana can do about it. Really harsh from the Man United's perspective, but it was coming, and it was so avoidable from the United perspective. I just think to myself, you didn't need to do that at that moment in time. You know, just block off the Kwanzaa. I did think to myself, Rashford, you got to do slightly better in that situation. Obviously, Rashford makes up for it later on in the game, but at that moment it did look bad. But then, not only do they not go in at halftime 1-1, they go 2-1 down. And Man United had the ball in a very similar position to the Endo offside goal, and this time it's Aaron Wan-Bissaka with the ball in that position. And just think to yourself, right, you need to find a Man United player in that position, because if you lose it, you are in trouble. What does he try and do? He tries to kind of find the space elsewhere, try and pass it back to Onana, but really he should try and find maybe McTominay in the middle or just kick it long. But while he doesn't help himself, the fault of this goal isn't actually his. There are actually so many players at fault for this Man United goal, but it's very well done from Liverpool to persist with that high press, and then Joe Gomez actually wins the ball back from Bruno Fernandes very cleanly. And you could potentially blame Bruno, but I think there is so much still to happen in this move that Man United should do better as a collective. I think Dalot is doing a fantastic job of sizing up Diaz, making sure he has to pass to Núñez, but Rafa Varane at the back post is playing everyone on side. He needs to be a little bit higher. But not only that, I think the positions of Scott McTominay in essentially the back four, Kobe Mainoo a bit too deep. I think they need to be pushing themselves out a little bit further as well. And I'll show you what I mean with the next one, because from here, Diaz passes the ball to Núñez, and Dalot is the one who should be running at Núñez, not Lindelof. Right, and I'll explain why in this next screenshot. Because Núñez cuts back inside on his favourite right foot, and I think from there, it's far too easy, because I think Lindelof should be supporting Dalot, and Dalot should be the one closing down Núñez. I think Rafa Varane should be much further in, more on Salah, and I think Scott McTominay should be one taking up the run of Luis Diaz, and Kobe Mainoo should be there with Alexis Mac Allister, which he is. I just think to myself, there is so much wrong. Just look at the back four here. You got the centre back closing down in the right back position. You got the right back marking no one really. You got Scott McTominay just in the middle there. You got Rafa Varane so deep, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka is just now on the edge of the penalty area, not even really in this phase of play. I'm just thinking to myself, it's so poor. And I saw some Man United fans criticise Onana for the save, but I think it's very similar to the Kelleher one for the Man United's first goal. I think the shot is taken with so much power that the goalkeepers have no choice but to just palm it into that area. But I think there should be a Man United defender in that area. I think defenders should really bail Onana out of that. And Man United find themselves 2-1 down going into halftime, and you just think to yourself, how on earth have they got themselves into this position? And in the second half, it is absolutely all Liverpool, and I just thought to myself, they really should have scored in that second half, Liverpool. And I think the fact that they didn't was criminal. They had so much possession of the ball. They had all the momentum. They had more chances. And I just thought to myself that if Liverpool didn't end up scoring in this period of time, you need to score when you're on top. And when they didn't, and you entered the 80th-ish minute, I thought to myself, it's a cup game. Man United have to go for it. They will go for it, and they will throw everything towards it. And I thought to myself, with Harry Maguire coming on, I thought with Anthony coming on, I thought with Eriksen coming on, they were all positive changes, and players who could affect the game in a positive way for Man United. And I think a little bit of credit to Ten Hag for making those changes. However, I'm not going to give him too much credit for it, because I think to myself, in an FA Cup game and knockout game, you have to win the game, otherwise you're out. You may as well throw your best players and attacking players on the pitch. But I want to give credit to Ten Hag a bit later for what he did in extra time, especially because I think that's what he did there was actually more brave and more genius than what he did in normal time. But I think from the Liverpool perspective, I think Jurgen Klopp, with the substitutions, he took Szoboszlai off for Harvey Elliott, absolutely fine. He took Conor Bradley, he brought Conor Bradley on, for Robertson, absolutely fine. But the one change he made, which made no sense to me, was he brought off Mohamed Salah on the 77th minute and brought on Cody Gakpo. And the reason why that's so frustrating and why I don't understand it is because of the fact that Mo Salah played 90 minutes in the Europa League last 16 against Sparta Prague on Thursday. And that's a game which Liverpool had wrapped up. By the end, the scoreline was 11-2. And Liverpool didn't need to play Mo Salah for 90 minutes. What you're telling me is Jurgen Klopp played Mo Salah for 90 minutes in that game, which meant that he wasn't able to play 90 minutes against Man United in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. And then, obviously, Jurgen Klopp is a world-class manager. And I'm not saying that he's not good enough. I'm just saying I think he made a bit of a mistake. And I think it's fine to say that, these world-class managers make mistakes, because they all do. Sometimes you said Pep has overthought it. And I think Klopp, in this situation, where he's been renowned this season especially for making fantastic second-half substitutions and changing games, affecting games, I think he made a mistake, especially because Aaron Bissaka had to be substituted because he couldn't play the full 90 because he had only just come back from injury. And you take off Mo Salah and bring on Cody Gakpo, and I showed you that still of the screenshot of the 5 vs 2, and Cody Gakpo, when he came on, he didn't have a great game for Liverpool. He really, really didn't. I think it's got to the point now where in the run-in, it's become very clear where the Liverpool players stand in terms of, the positions for the first team. I think you've got Mo Salah in terms of the forwards as standout first choice. He's absolutely going to start every game if he's fit. And then you've got the 3 behind him who are all competing for their other 2 places of Núñez, Diaz and Jota. And I think Cody Gakpo is just a little bit behind all 3 of them. As far maybe as Mo Salah is above the 3 behind him, I think Cody Gakpo is below the 3 ahead of him. And I think he really, really didn't have a great game when he came on. He was actually really quite poor. He came on for fresh legs and he looked knackered and he was slowing the game down and he was off it completely. And I think, I think maybe that was a mistake. I think playing Mo Salah for 90 minutes in the Europa League on Thursday was a mistake, and bringing him off as a result, I think maybe it's one where you look at Jurgen Klopp, could he have done better? Should he have maybe taken Salah off? I think probably definitely in the Europa League, and should he have left him on for 90 minutes? Absolutely. But on the flip side, we've got to give credit to Ten Hag. And Man United fans, this is the part of the video that you've been hoping for. This is where Man United get all the credit, because if you think about the attacking changes, Eriksen for Kobe Mainoo, Diallo on for Varane. The substitutions were happening. I was trying to figure out where the Man United players were playing, and I just thought to myself, it doesn't matter where they're trying to play. You're just trying to win the game or get yourself back into the game. And Man United absolutely got themselves back into the game, and fair play to Erik Ten Hag, because it was Antony who got the goal. And I know it's so weird to be crediting Antony because, the narrative is that, he's a terrible footballer, he's a waste of money. And you know what? He might still be a terrible footballer and he still might be a waste of money. However, the fact that I think there's something poetic about the fact that, we've been memeing him for being a fidget spinner, his stupid skill that he keeps doing, but the fact that he does kind of turn Endo in this particular situation, and he does kind of fidget spin, and so, he did it. He got it through all his bodies, and I think Kevin Kelleher was completely unsighted, and the ball was in the bottom corner, and Antony got Man United back into this game. And I think this, all you can do is you can chuck on attacking players and you can hope for the best. And Antony absolutely delivered in this moment, but also later on in extra time as well, because he's ended up playing, left back or left wing back or whatever. But I think Erik Ten Hag, massive praise, because in extra time I thought to myself, Man United have put on so many attacking players, they've got themselves back into the game, but defensively they're probably going to be all over the place because of the attacking substitutions they've made. They need a bit more structure in that defense so they can go forward in a more organised manner. But Erik Ten Hag didn't do that, and he went absolutely mental with the formation and the players in the different formations. And I thought to myself, if that was Pep Guardiola, if that was Jurgen Klopp, if that was Mikel Arteta, we'd all be saying, oh my god, he's gone absolutely mental, but he's he's a genius because it's worked and he's done amazingly well. But because it's Ten Hag, neutral fans don't really want to give him the credit for the fact that it worked, and because it's saying, oh, it's just a bit of luck. But I want to make sure that I do give Erik Ten Hag credit, because I was trying to figure out where the players were playing in that extra time period. I thought to myself, I think it was maybe a 3-4-3 kind of formation. I think maybe Dalot was right centre back, Maguire centre back, Lindelof left centre back, Eriksen and Hernandez in like a double pivot. I think Rashford, Garnacho and Diallo were up top, and that meant that Anthony was right wing back and someone else was left wing back. I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, it doesn't even matter, because whatever he did, it worked. And the fact that, credit to him, because he could have gone a bit more defensive. He didn't. He absolutely went for it and went for the game. And he could have looked silly doing it. And for a moment, Man United did look silly for doing it, because Liverpool, with all their experience and, of being in the situation several times, and most noticeably against Chelsea in the Carabao Cup final a few weeks ago, they were the ones slowing the game down, playing the game at their tempo, because they knew that they couldn't let Man United get a hit of steam on themselves. They couldn't let the fans get involved, because if they did, they're in trouble. So they slowed the game down. And do you know what? The kind of formation and the way that Erik Ten Hag was getting his players to play didn't really work in the defensive front, because when Liverpool did go forward, they did get some joy, and Liverpool scored, and it made Man United look silly for a moment, because here you have Liverpool's goal from Harvey Elliott to go 3-2 up in the game. And I just thought to myself, from here, I thought, right, there is absolutely no way Liverpool are losing the game. They're so experienced, they know what they're doing. Absolutely not. What transpired to be ended up being one of the greatest comebacks in history. But if you look at it here from this goal, where Harvey Elliott takes a shot, yes, he gets a deflection of Eriksen, incredibly unfortunate, wrong foot turned on, and nothing he can do about it. But the amount of time and space that he's got on the ball here, and if you think about it, look at the 4 players behind Harvey Elliott. I mean, they're all just there, dawdling around, not doing anything, kind of, completely out of the way, completely taken out of the game. And you just think to yourself, one of them needs to be closing down Harvey Elliott, one of them needs to be in midfield. But do you know what? That ended up costing Man United a goal, but it meant that they scored 2 later on. And Amad Diallo, the guy who has had so much trouble at Man United with injuries, he had a fantastic loan spell at Sunderland, and I really thought to myself that Man United have got themselves a really good player, and clearly they still do. But here he blocks the pass from Nunez. I think he's trying to go to Endo, which even if he made the pass, I think it was probably a mistake, because I think Eriksen is on him. Maybe he's trying to go for a cross-field pass. I don't know what he's trying to do really. But Diallo gets himself in the way, and that leads to the Man United counter and the goal. And I think credit to Scott McTominay, because when you see McTominay in situations like this is why he needs to be further up the field and not in the defensive situations, because he times the run to perfection, he times the pass to perfection, he doesn't hold on to it for a second longer than he needs to, he releases at exactly the right time. Van Dijk is looking at McTominay there. I actually think potentially Van Dijk's position is all wrong, but he's worried about Diallo, who not only made the block from Nunez, then made a sprint and made a run, which meant that Van Dijk was then very close to watching him, and he left Rashford in a little bit of time and space, and then Rashford finds the pass perfectly. And then you think to yourself, and there it is in the corner, 119 minutes and 55 seconds. You think to yourself, Liverpool, what are you going to do with this corner? Are you going to send your men forward, or are you going to sit back and take it to penalties? And in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. Obviously, you don't send all your players forward for the corner. You sit it out and you go to penalties. And, you take your chances, because you've got a very experienced keeper and players who've been used to being in a penalty shootout. But, of course, if they ended up scoring from the corner, we'd be saying, it's a genius move by Klopp. So when he doesn't quite work out, a game of 5 margins, like I said at the beginning. And this one, Endo and Elliott, lads, I've got to be honest, just communicate. One of you just shout mine or something, for the love of God, because, 119 minutes and 55 seconds, Man United, the last minute of extra time, and you just think to yourself, oh my God, you've had an absolute howler. And to be fair, and credit to Amad Diallo again, because again, he makes the block, he makes the tackle, makes interception, which allows Man United to get on the counter-attack. And if you were a Liverpool fan with this 2v1 scenario, you're probably hoping, right, it's alright, it's Virgil van Dijk, it's going to be fine. But no, it's not. It's Conor Bradley, because Virgil van Dijk is up from the corner. And if there is one man in world football you want in this situation as a Liverpool fan, you want Virgil van Dijk. With the greatest respect to Conor Bradley, you don't want him in this situation, even against 2 youngsters of Garnacho and Diallo. There's so many times that, you've dreamt about the situation, you play the situation on FIFA, and you think to yourself, right, you know exactly what's about to happen here. And you just think to yourself, can they do it? Can they execute it perfectly? And they almost mess it up, to be fair. Because the pass from Garnacho is a little bit wide, but Diallo obviously does take the finish no matter what, right in the bottom corner, gets sent off because he's got a second yellow and he doesn't even realize. You can see it in the tunnel, in the changing rooms. And you just think to yourself, you know what? They've early gone and done it right at the end. And what does that mean? Well, like I said, extremely fine margins. Man United was so close to losing that game, but they ended up winning it. And I think that's the beauty of cup competitions, of the FA Cup, the magic of the FA Cup. It's not just reserved for teams in lower divisions. You can have magic when you're in the top divisions as well. And I just think to myself, fair play to Man United. Fair play to Erik ten Hag, I think, actually. Because, you know, a man who's come under a lot of criticism, because if Man United lost this game, there would have been a lot of people saying, do you know what, it's time for Ten Hag to go. But he's bought himself a bit more time with Coventry in the semi-finals as well. Man United should win that, should be in the final against either Chelsea or Man City, probably Manchester City, and a chance to make right from last season's wrong.